But Matrix is our base MLS system. So if you guys are new to our MLS, which looks like at least one of you guys was, um, you'll probably at least be familiar with the concept of the listing data getting compiled into one location and then getting distributed out to all of the various websites that we syndicate to. So what ends up happening is that listings will be added into our system using the add edit functionality. And then once those are in here, they can be searched. And then there's a whole bunch of other systems that rely on that data outside of even just the MLS side of things. We syndicate that data out to our various websites that we work with, as well as all of the other systems that you guys have access to through your membership. Like Realist takes listing data, Transaction Desk can turn listing data into a transaction. You can start making offers through Offer Manager. You can set up showings through Showing Time. Tons and tons of different tools and functions that you guys have access to, but all of it relies on the data that gets entered into Matrix. Now, the matrix system as a whole is going to be kind of basic. The idea behind this uh, is that what you're going to be looking at is all of the listing information for the properties that have either been currently listed as active or have had some time on the MLS and have subsequently either sold, expired, released, whatever the case may be. Now, we're going to be talking primarily about the basic functionality of the system. So instead of getting into the weeds of like what the rules are around getting listings into the system, which we cover in our MLS rules and regs class, or the add edit functionality, which we cover in the add edit class, we're going to be primarily focusing on the most important functions and trying to get you guys the most usage out of the most important features of Matrix. Now, before we dive in too far into the actual functionality and what you guys can do in Matrix, I did actually want to address a couple things here first. So up at the top right corner, there's going to be a little drop down here. It might either just say your name or it might say working as. If you guys do have working as functionality, it'll allow you guys to switch between those, but it'll always indicate to you up here who it is that you're actually signed in as. So right now, since I'm signed into the training agent account, that's what's displaying here. If I do switch over to a different account, it'll indicate that up here at the top. So working as, and then it'll show me who it is. If you don't have that, it should just show your name. It should be quick and easy, but go up to the top right there and then click on settings. So before we dive into too much about the actual system and what you can do in it, I always like to take a brief tour to double check what exactly is available for your profile. Now, it's very important in the case of Realist, or excuse me, Matrix, because what ends up happening with Matrix is that once you actually get the information uh, effectively sent out to your client, you're going to end up having people seeing a certain set of data that's going to be defined by this My Information. Now, the My Information section allows you guys to verify what information will be displayed whenever you guys send things through this system. So it's important to recognize that this is actually going to be what your client will end up seeing when they end up receiving something from you. So before we dive into finding listings, getting them sent out, creating reports and everything else, we need to make sure that the information that will be appearing on those listings and appearing in those reports is up to date and ready to go. So first and foremost, it starts us off on our information tab. If you guys don't take notes on too much else in the class, I really can't recommend enough that you guys effectively treat this like this is your only homework for the class. Make sure to double check that all of this information in here is up to date. Make sure you've got your correct cell phone number in there. Make sure that you have the correct email address in there. If you do end up having something in here that maybe is spelled wrong, like if maybe you're um, Richard, but you go by Ricky or something like that, there is an option over here to the right where if you have like Richard, which is your legal name, and you know got that put in there or whatever, and then you want to advertise yourself as Ricky all the time, you can always come in here to do the override and make that change here so that whatever it is that you guys are primarily advertising yourself as is going to be appearing here. But if you guys already have your name put in the way that you would like it in our membership data, it'll all be appearing here in gray. You won't need to use that override option at all. But if you do notice that there's something in here that you actually want to make a permanent change to, make sure to get in contact with us over at the service desk or actually, excuse me, I'm sorry, the membership team is now who to reach out to. But make sure to reach out to them and let them know that there's something that needs to be updated because they also keep all of that stuff on file and it'll populate out to other systems as well. So if it's wrong here, it's very likely that it's also wrong in Realist and it's also wrong in Transaction Desk and everywhere else it goes. All right. Now, if you do end up making any changes to this, make sure to hit save. The information that you guys change on here will also appear in this header and footer section. Now, the header and footer section, if you haven't been here before, just as a heads up, it'll end up looking like this. It'll show you guys a bunch of basic templates that you can use. Once you guys find one that you like, you can just check the little checkbox over here to the left of it. That'll indicate that that's the one that you guys want to run with. Ooh, that looks like a lovely place I'd like to be. I'm going to check that checkbox and hit preview. Once you hit preview, it's going to bring you back to a page where you guys can see what it looks like. This is going to appear whenever you guys actually create custom print displays or reports. Now we'll talk about how to actually create a couple of those. Is there one that works best for printing in black and white? That's a good question. I like the basic template. And in fact, actually, if you guys do end up wanting to keep something that's really, really simple, once you guys hit that preview option, there's actually some choices to select here where it says use custom colors. So you guys could effectively set this to be all white, which just as a reminder is all Fs. And then you can effectively set that up so that all of the text is just black, all of the other stuff is just white. Banner background, oh, actually banner background is the one that I want to change. There we go. And we can always give this a little bit of a, there we go, just like that. So very, very basic, but at least it's visible. And if you do end up wanting to change your template later, so if you guys liked this and want to go back and make a change to it later, you can always hit this select a different banner image theme. And what that'll allow you to do is just go back to this particular setup and you guys can choose a different one if you would like. Oh, this one might look good in black and white as well. Not that there's any ocean nearby here, but might be nice. Now, another important thing, after you guys have chosen your banner or the theme that you guys are going to be using, we need to talk about the information that will be displayed. All this information that you guys have here will be tied to this branding dropdown down below. So if there is something that you guys wanted to have appear in a certain position, you guys can change those by clicking on the dropdown, choosing which item from there, and then moving on. So if you do have something that you wanted to kind of change up, make sure to make those changes here and save them once you're done. Now this section is called header and footer. We've dealt with our header. If I scroll down, there's also a section down here for the footer. I might as well point out the footer, again, with the limited amount of information that most people are going to add to this, probably don't need to worry about this, but there is the option, of course, to just not have a footer at all. So if you guys don't want to have a footer, you can just do no print footer for me. If you do, again, it's the same branding position or branding principles where you just choose which item it is that you want, and it'll appear at the bottom there. And again, you guys can change the colors as well if you guys wanted to do all black or all white or whatever the case may be. All right. After you guys are done, make sure to hit that save button though so that we can move on. Oh, and I did skip over this, I shouldn't have, but use custom photo allows you guys to put that custom photo in there. Always make sure that wherever you guys are putting your headshot, this is maybe just a reminder more from the marketing class that I had in college, but always make sure that you guys have the same information appearing everywhere. So if you spell your name or you format your name a certain way, or if you have the same photo for your Facebook that you do for your business website, whatever, people are going to be far more likely to remember you. Memorization is always about exposure. So if people see the exact same headshot of you every single time they see your face, they're going to be far more likely to actually remember you. And they'll also have a little bit more of a consistent branding in their mind. So whenever they see something from you, they know that it's actually from you rather than some stranger that kind of looks similar to you. But again, just make sure that you guys always use the same headshot everywhere you go, and you can change that photo here. All right, CMA cover sheet. There is an option to add another photo here. Again, make sure that you use the same one as before. The CMA cover sheet only appears on one particular report. We covered this in our basic CMAs class, but Just as a heads up, you probably don't have to linger on this one too long. Make sure that it's up to date. You're good to go. Next is the email signature. Again, I do recommend that even if you don't remember the rest of the stuff from this class, think of this as your only homework. Make sure to go through all 5 of these just to double check everything. The email signature one, all the more so, because this email signature, you can actually just copy from wherever you guys already have an email signature that's pre-formatted and just paste it in here. So instead of having to go through and redo everything that you guys have on your signature, if you have it somewhere else, like if you have it on a email that you guys use for work or whatever, copy it, paste it in here, you're good to go. Easy peasy. One of the really nice things about this, just as a reminder, is in the past, you used to have to manually update everything. So like if you had an image that you wanted to post, you had to put it online somewhere, copy the URL, blah, 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 blah. Now it just copy paste, easy peasy. But just like with the having the same headshot everywhere that they can see your face, it's important to make sure that you guys have the same email signature everywhere as well. It adds that air of legitimacy to everything that you send them. All right. Last option is going to be the one home section. Now, when we're talking about everything here in Matrix, we're going to be talking about this from the perspective of you as the agent. We're going to be viewing the agent version of the information that the listing agent has provided. We're going to talk about how to get reports created. We're going to talk about all the buttons and options, search functionality, et cetera, et cetera. But that's only going to be for you as the agent. On the client's end, what they will be interacting with is a system called One Home. That One Home system has a profile that's going to be for you. And that One Home system is also going to have some details about that profile in this particular section where you guys can update your photo again. Again, it can be a significantly higher resolution photo. And it also has all your links for your Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, get your license number put in there. And then down here towards the bottom, there's even a spot for you guys to add in who you are, kind of a little explanation about yourself, and even provide a little video link. You guys have like a interview with yourself about um, who you are, what you do, or your focus in the industry, whatever the case may be. Um, I did want to point out for this particular page that, again, this is the client-facing information directly in that One Home system. So rather than it being something that you would be printing off or creating as a CMA or emailing to them, this is the actual system that they will be interacting with. So if there is one place to make sure that you guys for sure get the correct information put in there, this is the spot to have it correct, because that's going to be the most client-facing information that you guys create. All right. But that should be it. Make sure again that any changes that you guys create, you've saved. And let's head back to My Matrix. Now, if you just click on My Matrix, that'll bring you back to your home page. There is also a little sub menu here where you guys can actually just click on My Matrix from there, then go to the Home option. Both of them lead to the same place, so you don't have to use that sub menu. If you just click My Matrix, it'll bring you back to this page. Now, that home page is something that you do have the option to customize. So if there is maybe a particular function that you guys really like on this page, like I know a lot of people are really partial to Market Watch. A lot of people also use that Hot Sheets, which I have, and they're here under my search. If I wanted to maybe put these into the center space so that they're right up here at the top, I can move that by clicking and dragging to put that into a different position. Now, I'm really big on this idea, so if this isn't really your cup of tea, don't worry about it. But I think it's really important for people to have their layout, their setup in a way that's going to be the most beneficial to them specifically. It's called workspace optimization, I guess is the fancy way to say it. But I can't stress it enough. Every every single way that you guys can make your journey through any of these systems a little bit easier, even if it's just moving something one spot. So if it's Market Watch is something that you guys are using all the time, and maybe that my favorite searches, I'm using that all the time. If you guys are using something frequently enough, that little bit of scrolling every time and trying to reposition your mouse, that's all thinking that you have to do every single day. Those little moments, those little seconds, minutes, hours all add up over time. So the better you can make the system kind of work with what you need it to be doing for you at any given moment, the better your life is going to be, because all of those little bits of time you get back. So I think it's really helpful to have that. But if you guys do end up having any rearrangement that you want to do, you can move those around just by holding your cursor over the little headers. If there's something that you guys don't use or you guys don't need it to be on the screen at all times, like this My Cart section, maybe I'm not using this too much, there is a little collapse icon that allows you guys to just kind of collapse it out of the way. So if there's maybe something you guys aren't using frequently, but you still want it to be readily available, you can use that little collapse icon. There's also the option to just hit the X and make it disappear. Now, it doesn't go away forever. It'll be tucked under a section called additional. Notice there is no X on this one, thankfully. But if you do end up tucking something away into the additional section by hitting the X, you can always just click and drag to return it to the screen so that if you needed it back or there was something valuable in there, you just wanted to double check it, you guys can drag those out of the additional and drop it somewhere else. And again, as soon as you hit that X, it dumps back into the additional and you guys can kind of clean up your screen. But make sure that this is going to end up working for you. Again, my layout might not be what you'd like, so always make sure that this is customized to what you would prefer for it to look like. All right. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about is going to be our most basic search. I just got into Matrix. I just got off the phone with somebody that was telling me that they had a great property that I should take a look at. And it's time for me to do some research, whether it's a listing property or if it's a property that maybe had been listed before. There's going to be a search function over here to the far right, and I would recommend leaving it at the far right. You can reposition it, but I always recommend leaving that immediately available because if you get in here and you need to search for a property's address, you can just type in the basic parts of that address and run a search immediately. Now, it's only going to be looking for two very specific pieces of information by default. The house number, which is just going to be the very, very beginning of the address, whatever number's at the beginning, and then the street name. Now, it's notable that it's saying street name and not the street. Oftentimes, when people conceptualize an address, they think of the house number, and then if it's South Sandusky Avenue, they think of that as the street. That is technically correct, but in this case, what we're looking for is just the street's name. So there is no south, there is no avenue, it's just the name of the street. So when I run this search, this is going to find every time that particular property has actually been listed in our MLS. Now, if it has not been listed, you won't find any results. There's a whole separate search we'll cover in a minute here about how to find properties that are off market or public record, tax record information. But if it has been listed before, or if it's currently listed, for instance, I'll be able to find that listing immediately just by getting the house number and the street name put in. Now, again, this is effectively a history search as well. So even if this wasn't a listed property, I can still see all the times that this property had been put into the system before. Now, an interesting note about our system and the way that we actually display our listing numbers are 7 digits long. The beginning of each of our listing numbers is going to start with the year, and then the next 5 digits after that are going to be the actual listings number. But they all get combined into one whole. Now, what that means, though, is that during the aughts, back in 2000 to 2009, any of the listings that got put into the system would actually have been 0 and then a number and then the listing details. So there are some shortened numbers in here. So like, for instance, this particular property's listing was actually put in 2004. And because of that preceding 0, it just dropped it off. So it just was a 6-digit number instead of a 7-digit number. Once you guys have actually clicked into a listing, if you need to get out of it, there's a single line display button up at the top here. I'm going to reiterate that a couple more times because I think it's really stupid the way they named that, but I don't have a choice in getting that changed, unfortunately. But if you click into a listing to review, so like here's a property listing that was put in 2012, and it starts off with 12 at the beginning of the listing number, and then the remaining 5 digits are going to be specific to this property. I can go single line display and return back to my list. But we're going to take a very thorough look at our search functions in a minute here. So before we dive in too deep into that, I did at least want to give you guys an introduction to how the listing numbers work. Now, I wanted to point out as well, we've got listing data in our system that's older than 1992, but 1992 is when we first started digitizing some of the details about the listings. There are a couple older listing data sets in our system. You can probably won't be relevant most of the time, but it's worth pointing out that at least for the last 30 something years, we've had digital records of all the listings. Now, that is going to be specifically for the Tulsa area, and then we eventually ingratiated Bartlesville into it, and then now our MLS actually serves more than just the Greater Tulsa Association of Realtors. We also got the Southern Oklahoma Association of Realtors, the Texoma Board of Realtors, Ada Board, Ardmore. There's a whole bunch of them now. So if you guys do end up having a search and you guys are trying to find some listing data in an area that we very recently started working with, you might not notice as much information. And we got a question. How long do they keep disclosures online, or how far back? Uh, if I'm not mistaken, I believe we actually only have the disclosures as far back as this current MLS system. And I think we switched over from either Flex or Fusion. It might have been Flex. Um, and that was, ooh, uh-oh, the information is falling out the back of my head. It is at least a decade, I'm pretty sure. I would have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it goes back pretty far because I've been here for 6 years, actually 6 years in 14 days. Um, and we've got all those going back at least that far. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, those are technically supposed to stay on file for at minimum 7 years legally. But yeah, that's a good question. I might have to double check that during our break. But yeah, so I'm going to head back up here to our search function. And let's now talk about all the different ways that we can search for properties. Now, first and foremost, one of the most important things that we're going to be discussing today is the residential search. This is going to be the search that I think the majority of our members are using, but I did want to point out at least um, we do separate out all of our listings into 4 different categories at the moment. We will be introducing a 5th category very soon here. I'm hoping sometime in the next couple months, fingers crossed. But for now, we have residential properties that are for sale, commercial properties that are for sale, vacant land properties that are for sale, and then residential properties that are for lease. Very soon here, we will also have a commercial lease option. But for now, those are our 4 property types: residential sale, lease, commercial sale, and vacant land sale. Now, there's also going to be a cross-property search that you'll have access to. The cross-property search allows you guys to find properties in any category. And what that means is that if I needed to search for a property and the client was interested in either buying or leasing a property, you can use that cross-property search to find just any residential properties at all. Or if they're searching for a property that has a house on it, or maybe they just, wouldn't mind if they got vacant land and did a custom build on it, you can do that in a cross-property search. But our search functionality is going to be broken down into those 4 different categories by default, with that all-encompassing, all-in-one category of cross-property. But each of these also have either a quick version, so a quick residential search, quick commercial search, quick land, etc., and then also a create your own option. Now, it's worth pointing out that that create your own option is literally blank. It is a blank slate for you guys to just create whatever kind of search it is that you're interested in. Not necessarily recommended, because if you guys go even into just the quick lease, notice there's a whole bunch of these things on here that are probably the things that you're going to need to look for. So I really would recommend using just that regular quick search option. Um, if guys are needing to make customizations, I'll show you guys how to do that here in a bit. We'll be adding in some additional fields that we can kind of play around with. But uh, beyond searching for listing data, I did want to point out that there is an option here to search for open houses. So if someone does actually provide you guys with an open house that's going to be on a specific date or at a specific time or whatever, you guys can search for those. And then you can also search for whether or not they have any drinks or lunch or snacks or anything like that, because it's the only way I'm going to show up. So it looks like this coming weekend, looks like there's 6 different properties that are going to be having open houses. A couple of them in Tulsa, a little too far away from me. So that's a bummer. Maybe this Owasso one I might go to. From 2 to 4 on the 9th in Owasso, they have drinks and snacks. Ooh, nice. Oh, for $1 million, that'll be a nice tour too. I'm just kidding. I don't actually go to people's open houses for the snacks. But that is available if you guys need it. You can run a search for any open houses if your clients are interested in a specific time frame or a specific area. There's also going to be a public record search. Now, beyond searching for listing data or things that are attached to listings like the open houses, the tax search or the public record search that you guys have access to here are going to be all of the data that you guys have in the tax records as a whole. So this is all 77 counties of Oklahoma, as well as the 7 neighboring counties in Arkansas, will all be represented in our public record search. Um, I have been kind of amazed how this public record search works, if only just because I don't have to add in any of the extra details that I might need to if I were to do a search in uh, Realist instead. So if I come in here, I don't have to choose my county in advance. If I just toss my tax ID in there, it's very, very likely that it'll automatically be finding that listing for me. Heather asked, can you post a broker's open and an open house at the same time? I believe typically those need to be separate, um, but I don't know that we have any rules specifically about that. But for our public record search, this also allows you guys to search by owners' names. Now, these I would recommend that you guys actually choose a specific county for, whereas pretty much any of the location portion, map search, school district, city, zip code, et cetera, you don't necessarily have to choose a county in advance. Now down below though, we also have some more transaction related details. So the characteristics of like when it was that it was sold or bedrooms, bathrooms, maybe if it was listed during a certain time, all those kinds of basic details. And then there's also a search function for the real AVM, which we'll talk about in our realist class. You can take it or leave it. But I really like that they actually have taken all of that tax record information and dumped it into Matrix so that you don't even have to leave to go over to our realist tax system in order to find out more about a particular property. Um, Now, last, we also have our agent and office search. Both of these are going to effectively have the same basic functionality where if we have somebody that we're searching for, we can search for them by their first and last name or their office name. Um, One thing I do like about this search, though, just as a heads up, if we search for someone, even if we don't have their full name or even either of their names, once we actually track them down, if you click on their name, you can go into their uh, active listings. So if you had somebody that had contacted you and maybe you forgot to write down what the address was, or they didn't give you the MLS number, whatever the case may be, if you remember who it was that you spoke to, you can at least find them in the system and then track down that listing if you were trying to find out more about it. I really appreciate that. I kind of wish that that was the case for a lot of other systems as well. But beyond that, if you at least remember what office they were a part of, you can also go to an office search and just find any Keller Williams in the entire state, find them, click on their office number, click on their office agents, click on the actual person, see if Stacy Davidson has some. Oh, hey, nice work, Stacy. Lots of properties. So if I had talked to Stacy earlier and I kind of forgot which one it was, but I remembered which office she said she was with. I remembered most of her name, but I couldn't spell it right or whatever. I can still at least try and find back the information that I was looking for. Now, all of this information that we've gone through so far was searching directly in the matrix that we had. Now, there's a option down here at the bottom called Data Co-op. This is where we're going to actually exit the matrix system directly and enter into a co-op that we have with all of the other systems that are using matrix. Now, interestingly enough, The matrix system is what the MLS in Oklahoma City is using, as well as the one that's over here in Fort Smith. So when we're looking at this information, this is actually showing us all of the listings that have been put into a matrix system. Now, if you guys might have noticed, this system does look a little bit antiquated, at least relative to what we have as far as modern technology looks like. So it is available if you want it, I, I guess. Um, if it were me, I would recommend that you guys actually check out RPR. RPR is the Realtor Property Resource. This is a tool that's actually been provided to you guys by the National Association of Realtors. So as long as you guys have access to an MLS and you are a part of a association or just a part of the National Association, you'll always have access to RPR. And RPR does all of the MLSs that are willing to share. So like 80% of all the MLSs in the entire country are sharing their data into RPR. Whereas this data co-op that you guys have access to through Matrix is only going to see just the people that are using Matrix and also the ones that have decided to share. So this isn't as comprehensive as I wish that it were, but it is available if you guys would like to use it. Um, for some reason, we do actually have the guy that uses the data co-op system the most in the entire country that is a member of our MLS. And I think it's really bizarre, but um, more power to him. I guess he's getting a lot out of it. Uh, but all right, so let's dive in now into one of our searches. So we're going to transition now, instead of just talking about the generalities of the search functions and what you guys can do here, and we're going to instead just dive into a quick residential search. Maybe just to do a quick poll, 'cause I know we don't include this in our poll at the beginning of class, but how many of you guys are actually working with residential properties primarily? Now, if you do it as a side gig or something like that, I'll ask that separately. But um, I have been noticing a bunch of people recently have been doing residential and commercial, or I guess they call it resimercial or whatever. Um, but the good news is that once you guys learn the residential search, everything else is going to make sense as well. Because this is by far the most complicated of all the searches. There's only a couple things even to note on the commercial side of things, that like project name might be something that you might have to search for, and that's a separate field that's specific to a certain kind of property, et cetera, et cetera. But with the residential side of things, this is where you guys are going to have the most functions to be able to search by. And of course, this is, again, the majority of the listings that we have in our system are also going to be residential. In fact, if you notice down here at the bottom left corner, there's going to be a clear, certain number of matches, a map, and results. As soon as we start putting in any criteria into this, it's going to automatically adjust our number of matches. So as soon as I selected Ada, I'm now down to just 80 matches. Now, by default, when you guys first get into a search, no matter what kind of search it is that you're running, it's going to have active as the only selected item. So if you don't have a specific criteria put in, it'll just only be searching for anything that is currently active in our system. So down here at the bottom, we got 5,000 plus matches. If I click on this, I can actually see that we have 5,096 matches in our system right now. So what that means is just simply that there are 5,096 active listings. As soon as, again, we start narrowing down our search results, it'll start narrowing that further so that we can see exactly how many matches we have for that specific data set, whatever we happen to be putting in. So as I've been adding in more details, my number has been dropping and dropping. So just keep that in mind as we go through this, because a lot of what we'll be discussing today, even just by narrowing down to like house or a specific area or whatever the case may be, is going to decrease that number as time goes on. Now we can always go and view our results up here at the top right corner, as well as down here at the bottom left. And same thing goes with our map. We can also see what's on our map as well. We'll talk about the map search separately, though. I'm going to have to spend some time with that. Now, another important note, when you guys are going through and actually adding details in, there's going to be a couple sections where you can have a list of items. Now, the property subtype, the school district, and the city are the obvious ones here. But I did want to point out that no matter where you happen to be in your computer ever, whether it's on the File Explorer and you guys are looking at all your files on your computer, or if you guys are in Matrix and you're trying to select multiple items, there's a couple options to allow you guys to select multiple items at once, even if they're not contiguous. This is going to be the Control button on the Windows computers, and if you're on a Mac, it's Command. But if you hold down Control or Command and select another item, it'll allow you guys to select multiple items at once. Um, Anytime you guys have selected something in Matrix, it'll automatically show that it's turned that section blue, so that way I know for sure that I've seen, all right, so I've selected Ada School District, and House. All of those are going to be highlighted in blue to indicate that those have been used. As soon as we deselect those, and in this case, I'm actually hitting that Control or Command to deselect things, I can see that those go white again, and I'm not going to be using those for my search. Over on the left-hand side, we see that we've got our status, our property subtype, and then some contractual things, so contingent, corporate relocation, lender owned, which typically means that it's in foreclosure state of some kind, short sale, or if you guys have multiple parcels. This is an option to allow us to see if there's any bulk listings. Looks like we've got 40 bulk listings in our system right now. The center section, though, is going to be primarily the location based, so from here up. And then a little bit further down, there's going to be some extra details about the property, so garage capacity, pool on premises, some residential specific things. And then finally, we have all of our numeric values over here on the far right-hand side, all the way down to year built. And then we've got a search that we can search for either listing agent or their office. Now, a couple important notes about the center section, though. When we're talking about the location, we are going to go through a separate map search. But if you guys have some client that's actually wanting to see within blank miles of a certain location, so like we'll just do within 1 mile of, and then we'll say ORU. As I start typing, I did want to point out that it's going to try and offer to us a specific property address. In order for this function to work, where it'll automatically put a circle around whatever the address is, I do have to select it from this autofill. So if I don't use this autofill and I just hit enter, it might not actually work properly. But if I click on this autofill, it'll highlight a certain area on the map. And when I go to my map, it'll have dropped a pin exactly where that address is and then showed me a 1 mile radius around it. So if you guys do end up needing to kind of run a search in a very specific area, clear map on that, you guys can run that search that way. It's an easy way. You can also type in a specific address if you wanted to. So if you had an address already in mind, you guys can put in that house number and street name here. This is just a more complicated version of just running that basic search that we had on our homepage. So as a reminder, instead of running that address search on a search function, you can run that right here instead. But it's also worth pointing out that you can add in multiple addresses. So if you had a whole bunch of properties that you needed to search for all at once, you guys can add in up to 10 at a time. Down below that, we also have our school district information. The school district information and the city allow us to actually type in multiple items at once as well. So for instance, if I was going to search for Ada, I can search for Ada School District. Notice it automatically highlighted that for me. Then I'm going to put in a comma and type in Lada. Oops, if I can spell that right. So Ada, and now I've also got Lada. So even if I scroll back up to the top, I still see that Ada is selected as well as Lada. Easy peasy. So just commas will allow you to do that. I know that's at least one way to do it. If you guys would like to, there's also an option to do a pop-up. I kind of like the pop-up just because the pop-up gives us a significantly more legible list. Instead of it just being 5 items, it's got a whole bunch of them at once. There's 465 school districts, and if we do this the same way for the city, there are 683. This literally just went up yesterday. 683 cities in our system. Because yesterday we just added in Apache. But if you guys are noticing, this doesn't just automatically select things the same way that we did with our list. When we're looking through here, if we wanted to search for Ada, we search for Ada, we select it, and then we have to click Add to put it into our current selection. So if I wanted to add in, let's say, oop, let's search one more time. That's weird. Um, we're going to do a search for Bixby. So I got Bixby, selected that, added it to the list, and we'll do broken arrow, add, and then let's also do Jinx as well. There we go. Jinx, add, and then hit OK. And what that does is it just types in all of those with a comma in between each of them. And then if I scroll up and down on this list, I can see that those are all selected for me. Oh, there we go. Bixby and eventually Broken Arrow. But again, just typing them out with commas will typically work. And it's worth pointing out that you don't even have to spell out the full name in order for it to work if you guys are just typing and then adding in commas to things, which I really appreciate. All right. Next, there's going to be the subdivision function. Now, I did want to point out, at least with the subdivision search, when you guys are running a subdivision search, always add in asterisks at the beginning and the end. What this is doing for you is actually creating a wildcard search. So when we type in a wildcard search, what this is allowing me to do is instead of it just being a search for Minchell Park, which our system actually doesn't have a Minchell Park regular, it'll be the Minchell Park or Minchell Park resub 5, Granite Hill 12, whatever it is. Subdivision names are oftentimes not as easy as they look on the sign when you enter the subdivision. So if you put one at the beginning, it won't matter if it's Estates of Minchell Park, or if you put one at the end, it won't matter if it's Minchell Park Amendment 5, Resub 12, whatever. It's just going to automatically search for whatever's between those. So think of that as effectively the quotation marks. So put an asterisk at the beginning, asterisk at the end, and it'll give me 5 matches. To illustrate that point, if I go here and take out the asterisk at the beginning and end, it erases all of my results because there is no just regular Minchell Park in our system. Now, there are some cases where you guys might not accidentally find nothing. Like Turtle Creek, for instance, has 2. But if I put Turtle Creek with asterisks at the beginning and end, oh, I still get 2. There is anyway, always make sure that you guys put those asterisks on there. It'll guarantee your results a little better. All right. Now, the last section, and then we're going to take our break at the top of the hour, is going to be over here on the far right. This is all of our numeric values. Now, the numeric values are pretty basic. If you guys have a specific range that you're wanting to search, so 200 to 300, just type in 200-300 and you're good to go. Now, instead of doing something like 0 to 250, if I've got a client that can't go over $250,000, all you guys actually have to do is type in 250 minus. When you do 250 minus, what it'll do is say, I want to see anything that's $250,000 or less. So that minus is just doing an or less option. The same thing goes with a plus. So let's say that you guys finally got that really high dollar client. You're like, oh, we want to see only the things that are $1 million or more. Cool. You guys can put in $1 million, which would end up just being 1,000, because remember, automatically turns everything into hundreds of thousands over here, and just put that plus in there as well. So what that does is it effectively says anything that's $1 million or more. Now, the or more option, you're probably not going to be using as frequently with the price. So for your sake, I hope all of you guys have those clients that are like, let's start us off at a certain value, only go up from there. But in real life, we'll put in a price range up at the top. And then for my bedroom count, I'm going to put in 3 or more. So I put in that plus there, indicating that 3 bedrooms is the minimum amount. We got a couple kids, but if there's an extra bedroom, oh, neat, I've got a study now. Cool. So we got 3 or more there. Same thing goes for my total number of bathrooms. I can put 3 plus. But I want to make sure that at least if I'm going to be having 3 or more bathrooms, that I need to at least have 2 or more that are full bathrooms. So you can use that plus to effectively say, I would just want to see anything that starts with 3, and has at least 2 full baths. So it's a kind of nice way to guarantee some results. If you guys wanted to further whittle this down, you could even do 1+ for the half bath to make sure that there's at least like a guest bathroom kind of situation. But notice what that does to my search results. I'm at 135. If I take that off though, I've got 197, which means that there might be some properties on here that don't have a half bath at all, but are only full baths, but somehow have 3 of them, which is kind of nice. Right. Now, the living areas, just as a heads up, the living area is actually meant to indicate the amount of communal spaces, so a living room kind of situation. The number of stories, though, isn't going to be quite so obvious. Number of stories is actually a technical term. So where oftentimes we think of the number of floors as the number of stories, that isn't always the case. The number of floors is indicating how many levels a property has. The number of stories is indicating what the ratio is between that first and second floor. So for instance, if I have a uh, property where the square footage on the ground floor is going to be 1,000 square feet, and the square footage on the second floor is 500 square feet, when it's 1,000 square feet on the ground floor, 500 square feet on the second floor, that means that it's actually a 1.5 story property. Now, 1.5 is kind of our shorthand for this as well. So if the first floor and the second floor have a discrepancy between what the size is, so like it doesn't have to be 1,500, but if it was like 750 and 690 or something like that, yeah, it's only off by 60 square feet, but it's not technically a 2-story house at that point. If they matched, if it was 1,000 square feet on both, cool, that's a 2-story house. The rest of the time, though, you guys can just put in 1.5. It is kind of the shorthand that we accept. It doesn't have to be an exact ratio. Like, I don't expect you guys to get in there and say, like, oh, it has to be a 1.765 story house or something like that. No, just 1.5 is sufficient. As long as it's not a 1-story house, which means that there is only 1 floor and there is no second floor at all, or a 2-story house where the square footage is the same on both, which I would almost guarantee that some of these 83 are not actually matching that. But just keep that in mind. That is one of the caveats with using the stories. 1.5 is, again, just kind of a catch-all for anything with it. The second floor is not as big as the first floor. Now, the last thing that we'll talk about, and then we're actually going to take our break, is going to be our house square footage. Just out of curiosity, does anybody happen to know the 3 different sources that we can use for the square footage of a house? You can hit that raise hand button or just type it out into the chat. But there's 3 different sources. We did actually address how to search for one of them in Matrix already. Nobody knows off the top of their head, that's fine. And in fact, actually, we cover this in our rules and regs class as well as our add edit class. But when you're actually searching for square footage, we only allow one of 3 different sources: the appraisal, the building permit, or the courthouse records. Now, it's important to note that for your sake, as the listing agent, if you guys ever get a listing put in the system, you have to have a copy of that information available. Or if it's a courthouse record, make sure that it matches whatever the courthouse records are. We have had people in the past that have put in bad numbers, and that can be a big problem. In fact, I'm almost certain that there's somebody right now that's actually getting sued about square footage that was incorrect. So always make sure that you guys have a valid number. There is the option to add in no square footage. So if you don't have an appraisal, a building permit, or the courthouse records are not correct, you can put in 0 for the square footage. And in fact, even with the specifications I already put in, the price range, the bed, bath, etc., even right now, I have 4 matches in the system that have 0 for the square footage. Now, this isn't some kind of like Harry Potter house that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. This literally just means that they didn't have a valid source of information. Now, I don't want to miss out on those 4 matches when I'm trying to find all these properties for my clients, though. So if you guys wanted to put in a specific range, like they asked for it to be 2,000 to 2,500 square feet, you guys can actually put that in there with that size and then have a comma to separate out the 0. Now that does necessitate some extra legwork on your side. So when I go to my results, I'm going to have to go find those properties that have 0 for the square footage, like this one right here, and actually find out what the actual square footage is for the property. There is a section on here called house size. In this particular case, it looks like this person didn't actually use that. They're not in class today. Okay, no, they're not. But in this case, they did not actually put in a house size. This would actually just provide us an estimate of how large the house actually is. Let's see if there's a, let's try this one, grand view. Oh, they didn't do it either. Uh, should be 2 more at least. Salisaw. Hey, there we go. This is a homie. All right. So we've got, who is this? Is this in, are they in class today? Marilyn, good on you, Marilyn. But she did not have a valid source, no problem. There is a house size option. So even though the others didn't provide it to me, I can at least provide this one to my client because this does match their specifications. They want it somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500, and wouldn't you know it, we got somewhere in that range at least. But it's worth pointing out that if you don't have a square footage amount from either an appraisal, building permit, or courthouse records, you can't even quote it in the remarks. We don't want to have anybody get into a situation that's sticky just because they got, their data incorrect or something like that. But we're going to do a little bit more searching when we get back from our break. But it is the top of the hour. I'll just assume that people's internet are slow. All right, so we're going to dive back into it. In this case, I actually wanted to dive back into a residential search. And this time, instead of actually starting out with some of the details, so the price, the bedroom, bathroom, school district, whatever, we're actually going to start off with doing a map search. Now, you guys can use this in combination with something that you're already doing. So instead of it being an either or, in my case, I can just start with the map, define my area, then come back and do my details. Or if you guys wanted to, you guys can do your details, then jump to the map, and then get into the results. Either way will work. Oh, sorry about that. Allergies are getting to me today, so that's fun. At least I didn't, I got to the mute button before I sneezed, so we're good. But I'm going to start off with doing a map search. Now, the map search is fairly simple. When you guys get over to the map, it's going to show you a little collection of all of the different locations that have listings and kind of give you a general number of where those listings are. And then if you click on one of those areas, it'll kind of zoom you into it. As soon as you have under 500 listings displayed on the map at the same time, it'll start dropping all of those little pins. Now, if you notice, as soon as I zoom out, there's too many on the map at the same time. Zoom back in. Now I can see less and less and less. So one important note about how this works, though, is that when you guys are actually looking at the map, um, there's a few different tools that you guys have up here at the top to narrow down where you guys are going to be searching within. But over here on the far left is going to be where you guys can switch between map and satellite view. So if I wanted to maybe see the satellite image or the map view, if I wanted to add on the terrain, oh my gosh, I actually found a spot that actually has some terrain to it. No offense, Oklahoma. I'm from Colorado. I grew up where there's actual mountains, not Turkey mountains. But over here, we do have at least some texture to the map, which is nice. But in our case, I did at least want to point out that you guys can switch between those at will. I did want to mention at least that if you do have the satellite imagery on, it may take a little bit longer for it to load the imagery than it would if you guys were just using the regular map version. So if you're doing this on a, network connection that's out in the boonies, it might take a little bit of extra time to pull up that satellite imagery. It will remember your choice the next time you come in, though, so just keep that in mind. In addition to being able to change satellite or regular map view, There's also a layers option, which allows you guys to add in extra details like the zip code lines, the city lines, this county lines, school district lines, and also neighborhood lines if there is a neighborhood in that area. Um, if you do happen to be searching in the Tulsa proper area, so Tulsa County specifically, we also have an additional layer that we've added to the map. Zoom in for an example here. This area right here. Yeah, there we go. So when you guys are looking at the map, there's going to be an option to be able to see the parcels. So I can see all those little parcels in that area. But there's also going to be the FEMA flood zones and the Tulsa flood zones. Now, the FEMA flood zones are going to be a little bit more information than what Tulsa has. But what this effectively allows me to see is the Tulsa flood zones and the FEMA flood zones illustrated out for us. So as an example, there's a property that's right here. Happened to have been to this house before, and they ended up having some pretty significant flooding in this area back in 2019. You guys may remember that. Um, and apparently, when that happened, there was some lines that got adjusted because that was supposed to have been a once every 500-year flood. Apparently, this wasn't, we weren't due for it or something, so they moved a bunch of these lines around to kind of adjust for um, what actually ended up flooding in that area. So they moved that line back. Tulsa, on the other hand, does have some regulatory areas. So if we actually take off the FEMA flood zones, we can see where Tulsa considers a flood zone. This is helpful if you guys need it. Unfortunately, it is only available for the Tulsa County area. So you can see there's this weird cutoff here where the Tulsa County line ends. But it's worth pointing out that this is a little bit more accurate because this is locally collected data. This isn't some, overseeing federal agency. This is actually a group in Tulsa that did all of the flood mapping. So that's available. Again, Tulsa proper. The rest of the time, though, you guys can use this FEMA flood zones, with the exception of Eufaula, if I'm not mistaken. Um, yeah, here's a peculiarity. If we zoom in on Eufaula and FEMA flood zones are added, there are no flood zones in some areas in this region. Let's see if I can find it again. It tripped me out the first time I actually saw it because I'd never known that there was a spot like that in Oklahoma. But apparently, of course, now I can't find it again. Apparently, there was a swath of land and lake specifically where they don't have a flood zone because it's physically impossible for it to flood because of the way that they've engineered the lake, which was just fascinating. Looks like that might have changed, or they might have ended up going in and getting that data anyway, but it was missing from there for a while. Either way, the map functions, though, are still going to be very useful if you guys need them. Now, beyond, again, just changing the view or what's on that map at the time, we do have a whole bunch of tools to narrow our search results. Now, starting us off, we have a radius option. The radius option is fairly simple. We just click in one spot and then drag away. As we drag, notice that it does show me how far away from that space I've moved my cursor. So I'm 3 miles out. This would be a 3-mile radius. If I wanted to do a rectangle instead, just do a rectangle and click from one corner and drag to another. In addition to just being able to add those shapes, though, you also have the option to hold your cursor over one of these and say delete shape, exclude shape, or include intersection only. This one's actually kind of interesting. If I were to move my thing out and then do include intersection only, it would actually only be showing me the parts where there's an overlap of the shapes rather than actually allowing me to see all of them. If you guys ever need to get rid of a bunch of the shapes that you've drawn, can have multiple at a time, there is a clear all shapes eraser button up here at the top. Now, if you do end up wanting to draw a little bit more unique shape, there is a draw polygon or freehand polygon. The freehand polygon one is just click and drag, and as you drag, watch it just follows my cursor everywhere I go. And then once I'm happy with my shape, I let go and it closes it off. Um, that one's nice. I This also relies on you having a steady hand, and also if you're on a laptop with that trackpad, oh boy, good luck. Instead, I might recommend the draw polygon option. So instead of freehand polygon, draw polygon, where you click in one spot and it effectively drops a pin. Now, I'm not dragging my cursor, I'm literally just moving my mouse. So I'm not dragging. As soon as I click again, it drops a pin. Click again, drops a pin. Click again, 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 and so on. So fairly simple. I prefer it though, just because it does give you a little bit more control over where the outline is. So I like that draw polygon option. But this also allows you guys to make really useful shapes rather than just kind of having to settle for whatever circle or square it creates for you, a circle or rectangle. But one other thing to mention is that if you guys do end up having somebody that wants to maybe avoid a certain area, so let's say that they wanted to search in a certain part of town, so let's just grab this area here. They like that particular spot, but they also don't want to be anywhere near the highway. Maybe it's just a little bit too noisy. What you can do is actually draw a shape, and we'll just say, I just want it to not be anywhere near this little turnpike area here. When you finish up that shape, you can hold your cursor over it and do exclude this shape. And what that does is it says, I want to get rid of any of the stuff in that area. So if there is something that's maybe uh, not what they want, or like if they're looking for houses, but they're looking over in the area where there's that refinery and stuff like that, and they don't want to be where all the toxic chemicals are waving around in the air all over, which is crazy because it's literally right across the river from all this residential stuff. When I used to live up in this area, it was constant. You could always smell the refinery. But if you don't want to be down or upwind from that area, you guys could always just draw a shape around it and then just say exclude the shape. And it'll prevent you guys from having to be in that area. And again, you guys can always come back to any of the shapes that you do draw and effectively say that I don't want it to be any of this, or move the cursor, move the red dot itself to just make sure that you're not in that exclusion zone or whatever. Anyway, again, all those shapes can be used in tandem with whatever shapes have been drawn effectively by a school district or a city that you guys are working with. So like if I did Ada and then Ada with Lada, then I can come to the map later and say, all right, well, I got Lada, but I actually don't want any of the stuff that's in Ada proper. So I'll draw my spot there and then do exclude the shape and then only see the properties that are outside of town, that kind of thing. And again, if I needed to come back later and say, well, but actually I do want to make sure that it's in the right price range, I can come back to my map, verify which options are still available to me, and then head to my results at any time. Now, once we actually have some results, there's going to be a couple different ways for us to actually handle getting the listing data to a client. Before we do any of that, though, I would always suggest that you guys do some research on the listings that you find. So in here, there is just the listing numbers. When you click on that listing number, it'll pull up all the details for that particular property. If you have multiple results, you can always go back to that single line display. Again, single line display returns us back to our results page, and I can click on the other one. Or if you guys don't want to keep on going back to the single line display to see the search results, there is also the option to just go previous and next, and that'll move you between any of the results that you have. Now, once you're looking at the listing details, there's going to be a whole bunch of information that pops up here at the top. It's going to have the address for the property, the list price for it, how long it's been on the market, how long this property has been on the market, a bunch of details about the house itself, the public remarks, some more listing information. And then there's going to be a section down here where you guys can view the rooms. Just as a heads up, when you're looking at this information, there's a little expand button here that allows you guys to expand out and see if there's any rooms that have been added. So if somebody has gone through the effort of actually putting in the additional rooms for a property, you guys could see all of that information down here. In fact, actually, let me switch this over. Let's do search and broken arrow. And we'll do the 3 plus, 3 plus, 2 plus. There we go. 21 matches. I can work with that. All right. See if any of these have rooms. Hey, there we go. Okay, so this is what it looks like when you guys have a property that has some extra information put in. Here's a kitchen. It has a breakfast nook, an eat-in, and a pantry. They got a master bedroom with a private bath and a walk-in closet. Very nice. So when they get that added in there, again, you just have to expand that in order to be able to see that. In addition, whenever you guys are adding listings into the system, you do have the option to add in these rooms. Every time you add in a room, it's going to require that you put in what floor that particular room is on. On this main search function, it's worth pointing out that if you do have some client that has maybe, for instance, limited mobility, if they need to have that master bedroom and it has to be on the first floor, we can narrow down our search results by adding in master bedroom and has to be on the first floor. That way they only see the properties that have that master bedroom on the first floor so that they don't have to worry about, even if it is a 2-story tall building, I'm still going to see only the properties where they're not going to have to go up and down the stairs to go to bed, which it looks like all of these are. Oh, we got one that's 2 stories, apparently. Big doubt on that one. Where's the second story? Oh, wait a second. I stand corrected. There might be 2 stories. I'd still be willing to bet that this is probably a first floor is not the same size as the second floor, but that's not my problem. Wendy is not in class today, so we're not going to give her a hard time about it. But in addition to all of the basic information about the properties, there's also going to be the listing details as well as any of the contractual obligations, et cetera. It's worth pointing out we will be getting rid of that compensation field, I believe in August for sure. We have a whole class about this next week. If you guys are interested in coming to learn about what's happening with NAR and the settlement, et cetera, et cetera, next Friday, June 14, we're going to have a class about that. I would very, very strongly recommend that you guys check that out. Also, there's going to be some tabs up here at the top that you guys can navigate to. The listing details will have a lot of information about the property according to the agent. When we switch over to tax, it's going to be pulling the tax information from whatever the tax parcel number was that the agent had provided, and then find that particular tax reference. So all of the information from the county assessor's office should come over here. In addition to that, there's also going to be a section here for photos where you guys can view all of the photos that the agent has uploaded for this property. Check out the history for the property. So anytime the property has been listed, anytime the property had any sales on it. In fact, down here towards the bottom, it's going to show you guys not even just the information from previous listings, it's literally showing us any of the times that this property has had any changing of hands at all. So back in 2008, looks like it sold for 152, and then they ended up changing hands from Lynn Fogel to Lynn Fogel, and then from Lynn Fogel to Lynn Fogel again, and then from Lynn Fogel to Melita Tate back in 2013. And Melita is, I'm assuming, the one who's selling it now. Hey, there she is. All right. Well, hopefully she's getting her money out of it. But that's going to be our tax information, the photos, the history. The parcel map and the flood map, though, are going to be a little bit different. The parcel map is actually going to allow us to see this particular property on the map highlighted in purple. It'll show a satellite image up at the top left. At the top right, it'll show an estimate of what the size is of this particular property with the actual measurements on here. Again, it's worth pointing out that this is just an estimate of this. So there might be some rounding put in here. So this might have been 120 feet and 4 inches, but this was 120 feet and 6 inches. So it rounded up to 121. So don't take these as gospel. It's always best to verify that information with the county assessor's office. But it does also give you guys an estimate of what the exact square footage of this is supposed to be. A little further down, there's also going to be a third map. This one's more just a contextual map. I like using this one if you guys actually need to like zoom in, zoom out, maybe add some extra layers to this. Like if I wanted to see the FEMA flood zones, or if I wanted to see what the Tulsa flood zones were, et cetera, et cetera. So again, 3 different views will be displayed on the parcel map. The flood map, though, is going to be really handy if you guys actually want to get not only the flood map information, but also the official designation from the county records. So if they did actually add in the tax record information properly on that listing data whenever they put it in, this is where you guys can actually see that information after the fact. So I really appreciate that they have this in there because what this allows us to do is get an official designation of, hey, this is not in a flood zone. Nice. All right. Now, next thing to mention is that when we're actually looking at the listing data, either from here, when we're looking at it as in the actual individual listing, it's a whole bunch of icons under here. And then when we get back to our search display, there's also going to be a whole bunch of icons here as well. So if you guys would like to actually get a little bit more information about this listing before clicking on the actual listing itself, there's going to be an option to just click on this View Photos button. You guys can view any of the photos for the property. Cool. You guys can view the map. So instead of it being, a parcel map where there's three different views, it'll just pull up a little pop-up here. We can see where it's located, add some details, zoom in, zoom out, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just an extra pop-up. The same thing will happen if you guys click on the address. If I click on the address, it'll give me a little pop-up here. And again, I can see where it's located, zoom in, zoom out, et cetera, et cetera. Over here to the right, though, we have the history. This was one of the ways that you guys had to get to the history in the past was that there was only an icon for it instead of there being a tab like there is now. There's also an option to start a transaction. Maybe just out of curiosity, how many of you guys are actually already using Transaction Desk for your form filling and contract signing? Just hit that raise hand button if you are. I know a lot of people are not. It is a member benefit that we provide to you guys. So if you ever leave the office that you're with and you're not using Dotloop or SkySlope or what's the other one? Zipform, I think is, there's a few people still using Zipform. But either way, Transaction Desk is going to be a member benefit for the indefinite future. So if you ever need to get some contracts filled out and signed and your system's not working or you've changed offices or whatever, that start a transaction button will automatically take any of the listing data from this particular property and put it into a transaction for you. And it'll import over the listing agent information, the listings details, the address, the disclosures if the agent has uploaded the disclosures to that property, all that kind of stuff. Um, it's a great system. We have a whole 2-hour long class that goes over that if you guys are interested. The next icon over, though, is actually going to be the documents themselves. So in this case, this is actually showing us the disclosures that the agent has uploaded for us. So from there, we can see all of the disclosures or the lead-based paint information or anything else. In fact, this guy's got a limited service agreement, so he's got some information uploaded there. This next column over that it's actually missing stuff. Maybe let's switch this. Draw on my map. No, I did not. Switch this over to Bartlesville. There we go. Okay. And back to my results. Still none? Okay. Well, if there were any open houses, the open houses would be displayed in this column. It just looks like an open door. When you click on that open door, it'll indicate to you when it is that that person's next going to have an open house, which is kind of nice. Now, the icon next to that, that looks kind of a little bit like a film reel. This is actually the virtual tour. Now, virtual tours can be a huge variety of different things, whether it's a slideshow like what we're here looking at now, or sometimes people will do a virtual dollhouse or a video, or whatever the case may be. But it's worth pointing out that when you guys are actually uploading virtual tours to this, always make sure that it's the unbranded version. Anybody that's a reputable source of doing a virtual tour should be able to provide you guys with a branded version as well as an unbranded version. But always make sure that when you guys are uploading, it's always the unbranded version. Part of the reason why is just because they're trying to make sure that people aren't, corralling the buyers to only ever get in contact with the one agent when anybody can do the sale. Also, this is a really lovely house. Definitely outside of my price range, though. But those virtual tour links should just bring you to the same place, um, you do have the option to add in multiple virtual tours. So we have seen it before where when you click on virtual tour, it'll provide you a list of different virtual tours. You can have up to three. I've seen some where they have a slideshow like what we were just seeing. Others will have a slideshow and a video and a virtual dollhouse, 3D image kind of thing where you can click on a certain spot on the floor and see what it looks like from there, which is always really cool. But next icon over is going to be our Realtor Property Resource. Now, I mentioned this briefly before, but just as a reminder, the Realtor Property Resource is actually RPR. This is the system that is given to you by the National Association of Realtors. We have a whole bunch of different classes on this particular property or process. I would strongly recommend, if you guys have not had any exposure to it, to check it out because it is surprisingly great. Um, there's a lot of stuff that it can do for you, on top of the fact that it actually gives really great reports. So when you guys are looking at a particular property, if you guys wanted to get some information into the hands of your client, cool, click Create Report. You guys can get a 28-page report into the hands of your client within a couple of seconds. It's really cool. But again, all that can be found by just clicking on this little RPR link, and you'll notice that that's available for pretty much every property in the system. Now, not every single property will come up automatically, especially if it's like new construction or something like that, but makes it really easy to track that information down if you need it. Also, there's going to be a bunch of showing time links. We finally got this column added. I don't know why it took them so long to add this, but it's finally here. Yay. What this allows you guys to do is if you have a property that you're interested in, you can just click on that little icon and it'll start up the process of creating a digital showing schedule. So you guys can see when it is that they're going to be free, set up a specific time frame, even add in a specific buyer if you guys are working with someone so that they get the information about this uh, tour as well. All that information can be done from here. But again, it's just this little blue icon here with the little orange dots. And then of course, VM and RL are actually connected to Realist. So Realist value map to see maybe what the estimated value of this particular property should be. Which now I'm really interested because this is listed for 200,000 and RPR said 220 something and this one says about 218. Interesting. So they mostly got it. Pricing it to sell. We'll look at it that way. And then finally, the last option on here is going to be Offer Manager. Offer Manager is actually another part of the showing time system. But effectively, what this allows you guys to do is submit an offer to someone. And what it does is just grabs all the basic information about this particular offer process. You guys can even upload documents if you needed to, and then it'll send all of that information over to them. And they can view all of this in their Offer Manager interface and showing time, and it's really easy. We do have a pre-recorded version of the webinar about Offer Manager, so if you guys don't know anything about that, you guys are interested, I can't recommend it enough. It's a really cool system, really easy way to get that stuff done. And also worth pointing out, it's not something that you guys have to pay extra for. It's just all built in. All right. Now, just as a reminder, all those icons that we just toured are also going to be available underneath the icons or underneath the photos on the listing, but there are a lot of redundancies once you actually click into a listing because again, tax information is separated, photos are separated out, the history is also its own tab, parcel map, flood map, etc. And what's really cool about this, just as a reminder, is that when I click on one of these and then move to the next property, it's just going to stay on that same tab so that the next time I get to a property, I'm already on that tab that I was just looking at. That might get a little bit confusing. I've noticed if people are looking at one thing on one property and then they get back later and they're like, oh, wait, what? No, I needed to go back to the listing. There we go. It looks like this one might be cheap because of its proximity to Walmart. But there's a lake right next to it. That's cool. It's got a little pond. All right. Anyway, next. Okay, we should be set. I'm going to jump back to our search results. Let's now start talking about how to actually get this information. We actually got a comment. Oh yeah, and actually, um, I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's actually head back to our search criteria. We're going to run a search this time. Instead of it being just a regular search, I'm actually going to show you guys now how to add in some additional fields. And as our example, I'm going to show you guys how to actually search for properties that have a mother-in-law suite. So let's say that we wanted to search for mother-in-law suites or financing that's available, or whether or not it's a gated community. When you're adding listings into the system, there's actually a form that you can use to effectively guide you through that process. It's going to be under your forms and contracts, which you'll have access to through the external links on Matrix, or again from our MLS portal. There's a forms and contracts button here. Once you're in there, there's a MLS specific forms section where you guys can find the property data forms. Now, each of these property data forms for our four property types is not just a great way to kind of see what information you guys might need when you're adding a listing into the system, but it's also an easy way to find out what categories of information we have available for you guys to search. So as an example, if I go in here and do my Control F to run a search within this document, or Command F if you're on a Mac, I'll search for financing. So when I start typing that in, I can see that, all right, I've got a client who needs to use a VA loan. Well, if I want to see if that's an option for the properties that I'm working with, I can go to Finance Options in Matrix, and this option for VA will be available to me. Same thing goes if I was, for instance, wanting to know if there was an additional building on the property. There's an additional buildings option here. And then under lot description, there's also additional residents. So for instance, in the case of a mother-in-law suite, I would need to search for lot description and then add in this option for additional residents. So going back to Matrix, those options are actually not on here by default. So I don't have any choice to be able to search for the financing options or to search for the mother-in-law suite in the lot description. So down here at the very bottom, instead, I'm actually going to use this additional fields section. Now, under additional fields, we can click add, then I can run a search and find, in this case, lot description. Add that one in there, select it, click add, perfect. And we'll do financing, finance options, perfect, add. Now, it's worth pointing out that when you guys first get to this available fields option, it does have a huge, huge list. There's over 300 different pieces of information that can be added to a listing from the start of its lifespan to the end. So I would suggest, if you guys aren't familiar with every single field, pull up that form so that you guys can see what the name of a category of information would be. As an example, the gated community is one that we get a call about at least every once in a while. So when I do my search for gated, it's actually going to be hidden under the HOA amenities. So since the gate is something that's going to have to be maintained, there has to be a group that does that. HOAs kind of step in to do so. So in our case, if I wanted to get the gated access, I'm going to have to search for HOA amenities. And then when I go back to my search, now I have my lot description. Choose additional residents. I can do my financing options. See if BA actually has any results. 37. Hey, gated community. One match. Wow, we found the perfect house even just with those three criteria. Well, I guess I'm going to have to send this property out and jinx to my client because it matches all of my hypothetical. Wait, how is that? That's almost a full acre. Are they only selling a quarter of that? Anyway, who am I? But that is available again under the criteria. That's going to be under the additional fields. At least in the case of a mother-in-law suite or a guest house or something like that, that's under our lot description and under additional residents. But again, don't forget, additional fields is always available down here. One of the nice things about this is that even if I leave Matrix right now and come back to a search later, those additional fields will stay there. So if I wanted to clear those out later, I would actually have to come to this add/remove and get rid of them that way. But I find that most of the time, if you're adding something, you're probably going to leave that on there. In fact, I've actually seen some people where they have like, I don't know, a dozen or two of these additional fields that they've added as time has gone on. And it's just stuff that they occasionally were searching by, and then it's available to them again later. It's very handy. All right, but let's actually take a look now at how to actually get this information into the hands of our clients. So I'm going to do a search for a house with an additional residence in Broken Arrow. All right, so I got two results. Now, if I want to get this information into the hands of my clients, I have to head to results. Oh, hey, before I was mentioning that there's a column here for open houses. It looks like this one has an open house sometime in the future. But once I've actually gotten my search results, if I want to get this into the hands of my clients, there's a couple different ways for us to do that. First and foremost, I noticed that down here at the bottom, where there's a bunch of actions, I don't have email, I don't have print, share, any of these options turned on right now. In fact, if I hold my cursor over them, they say you must check at least one item. Well, those check boxes are going to be over here to the left of the listings. And I can click email to get this sent off to a client. Now, I did want to point out before we get too far into this whole process that when you're looking at this particular information, it does give you the opportunity at least to just start typing in an email. You guys just wanted to do email at email.com or whatever and just send it straight to them. Technically, you can. I do want to at least point out that it is not ideal to do this. What I would very strongly recommend instead is create a new contact, put that email in there with their name, and then save them as a contact. Now, part of the reason why I recommend doing this is that when you've actually created a contact in the system, what it'll allow you to do is actually keep track of how many times you've reached out to them. It's also going to allow them the access to the system so that they can save things as favorites, communicate things back to you, like if they want to put in a showing request or if they like a certain property or if they dislike a certain property. All of those options are available, but only if they've actually been created as a contact. If you don't create them as a contact, it's just going to put in their email address and that's it. It's not ideal. So um, save them as a contact. Again, all it requires is first, last, and email address. It's also worth pointing out, though I don't always recommend this, if you do have a contact that actually has multiple email addresses, so like if you have a couple that wants to all be on the same email address or on the same email chain, technically you guys can create a contact with multiple email addresses. One complication I've noticed that happens with that particular arrangement is that if one of their emails gets blocked, it blocks everybody's email. So instead of it sending out to the only people that are still on there that are still receiving, if one contact gets blocked, it just terminates all the contact with that contact as a whole. So the email address preventing them from getting anything will also prevent anyone else on there. So if you do have multiple contacts that want to receive this information, set up multiple contacts instead, and then just send it to George and also Bill, Stuart Gallagher, or whoever. You guys can send to multiple contacts there. It's also a carbon copy if you guys wanted to do like a husband and wife that way or whatever the case may be. If you do set up a new contact, there's also an option to add in a cell phone number, and you guys can send SMS messages to them as well, which is a recently added feature. Right. But the email function is fairly simple. Once we actually send this off to an individual, though, that information will be saved so that in the future, we'll also be able to see that I've sent these two properties to George. There's also a print option. The print option uses that print header and footer that we defined when we were going through our My Information section earlier. You guys can choose whether or not you guys wanted those to be added at all, though I typically at least recommend a header just to make sure they can reach back out to you if they get that. But on this particular list, I did want to point out that there are 6 different options on here that are marked as agent. And then there's going to be a matching 6, or at least 5 of them match, that are going to be labeled client. Now, the client versions are the ones that can be public facing. The agent versions are not meant to be public facing. So what that means, though, is just that if you guys do have somebody that is not a member of our MLS, they should not be seeing the agent version. The agent version is only meant for people who are a member of the MLS. Now, it's also worth pointing out you can choose multiple items at once. I mean, obviously, I've just held down Shift and selected all of them at once. But if you guys wanted to combine things together, so for instance, if I wanted to combine this one with this one, hold down Control or Command if you're on a Mac, and you guys can select multiple at once and then email those or print them off, whatever the case may be. In addition, there's also a shared link option. This is, again, another recently added feature. When you click on shared link, it'll allow you guys to generate a URL. So if you do have that client that maybe they don't do email, but they do Facebook Messenger, you guys can select the information here, copy that URL, send that to them in a different way, whatever's going to be working best for your client. We also have a CMA button. We don't cover that in this class. There is a directions button as well that allows you guys to get directions from one address to another. You guys can even go in and add in a start stop to that and then get a turn-by-turn directions to get there, which is especially handy if you guys are working with rural properties, but it's available for everything. All right. And then finally, we've got the stats. Gives us a tabular view so that we can kind of see effectively a quick rundown on the min, max, average, and median of the properties, as well as an export function for those advanced users, a quick CMA option if you guys just wanted to dump all this into a quick and easy report to put in the hands of your client. Cool beans. And then also there is finally the showing time option. So if both of these were available for showing time, I could actually just click on showing time, create a showing tour, add to my showing cart, and schedule my appointments for whenever it is that I'm planning on actually going out, which is kind of nice. I can set up when it is that I want to have my appointment. Neat. Set up my appointment there. Oh, and actually, maybe I need to put a little bit more time in between those because it looks like it's about 22 minutes apart. So I'm going to say maybe do that at 11 instead. Perfect. Have one at 10, have one at 11. Good to go. Then I can send my requests and I'm all set. So again, lots of cool functions down here in actions. When we click over to refine though, this is where we're going to start working specifically with a contact. Now, we've already actually worked with a contact in particular. In fact, in our case, we were using George Foreman. When I select George Foreman, it'll indicate to me that I have actually sent both of these properties out to him. So I don't have to worry about sending those again. If I was just running more of a general search for that particular area, when I go back to my results, I can see any of the properties that I had actually already sent to George by clicking on that emailed column. I can see all the different properties that I had sent out to him already. Oops, there we go. So I've already sent all of those. So if I'm going to start sending other stuff to him, I want to make sure that I don't accidentally include something that I've already sent to him. But the one that I think most people are going to be interested in is going to be the actions and the save option. Now, the save option is really nice. What this allows us to do is take the certain criteria that we've actually run and save this as a search for future use. Now, there's two different ways for us to save this. We can either just save it with just a name and not attach it to myself or to a contact, or I can save it with the search name, add in a specific contact, and then also put in a favorite search as well. Now, anytime you guys have the option to interact with a contact, whether you guys are sending something by email or saving a search for them, saving an auto search for them, there is a create a new contact button. So there is no excuse not to have a contact for a client. Again, I really would recommend that anytime you guys are working with a contact that you're going to be interacting with frequently, it's always best to just create them as a contact first, just so that they have access to the full scope of the system and what everything can do. Right. Now, I mentioned already, but there is a saved search or a auto email search. Now, in the case of an auto email, you do have to have a search that's going to have some specificity to it. So I'm going to put in a little bit more information. So I'm not looking at 400 results. Let's do 3+ bedrooms. Just keep going with that. Okay, that'll work. I got 21 results. So I've got a search constructed now with active, house, broken arrow, bunch of details. Now when I go to my results, when I get here, there's going to be under this save option, the new saved search, which we already explored, there's now a new auto email option. Now, what new auto email allows us to do is effectively say that whenever a property comes in that matches this particular set of criteria, I'm going to automatically email this contact up here at the top. Now, the email that we set this up with, whoever the contact is, if they have already subscribed to a previous email from us or someone else, they should automatically start receiving that auto email without any extra effort. But if somebody is new, they have never used this system before, they are going to have to effectively agree to it. And that's where we get into this welcome email. So I'm going to say BA houses, uh, 200 to 300. Perfect. Now, the welcome email should at least give them some introduction to this, but I would very strongly recommend adding another line in here that says, please click the link below to initiate the auto email. Because it doesn't have to be this obnoxious, obviously, but I do want to kind of reiterate, when they actually receive this the first time, what's going to end up happening is that they actually have to click on that link that says view listings in order for it to work at all. It literally won't send them any more emails after if they have not clicked that first link. If they do click the first link, they will continue to receive emails, and that'll come under this recurring email option. Now, how frequently they receive these emails is also going to be defined on here down towards the bottom. So beyond any time, the property comes in with this particular criteria set, it's going to send a schedule, or it's going to send on a schedule either ASAP, which means that within 15 minutes of a property being added that matches this particular criteria, they will receive an email. Daily is going to be sending it out at a certain time, either 8 a.m. or 6 p.m. You can do both if you wanted to, if you kind of wanted to give them a daily reminder, except maybe just only on weekdays, or skip, Tuesday and Thursday night, or whatever arrangement you guys have with the client. You guys can set that up. And then there's also going to be an option for a monthly email, which I wouldn't typically recommend, but if you have those perpetual tire kickers who are, uh, you know, occasionally sending stuff out, cool. But I would typically recommend just leaving things on ASAP. The daily one is a little bit more viable now, but like Heather mentioned, even um, it the ASAP option was practically required back in like 2020 to 2021. Listings are staying on the market for a little bit longer now. Like our average days on market is still under a month, which is wild because when I first got this job back in 2018, the average days on market was over a month consistently, pretty much all of our property types. And then 2020, 2021, I mean, things were just not staying on the market long enough for people to have a daily reminder. So ASAP was the only way. I would still recommend ASAP just because it's going to get things into your hands, into your client's hands immediately. But it's worth pointing out that depending on how vague your search actually is, they might be getting constant emails, or even worse, just a regular problem that happens no matter what kind of criteria you have. If an agent ends up adding something at, 11 o'clock at night, they're going to get an email at around 11:15. So auto email function is really great. So I'm going to just at least point out that that is available if you guys would like it. All of that information that we've discussed about the contacts, whether it's the things that we've emailed to them or the things that we've saved as a search for them or the auto emails, is all going to be found under this My Matrix and then Contacts section. Now, the Contacts section is kind of unique because this is going to allow you guys to see all of the different individuals that you guys have interacted with in the past. Anytime you guys set up a new contact in the system and send them something to use, they will get a reference number for them to use. And when you click on their name, it's going to show you guys a whole bunch of details about this particular client, including any auto emails that you've set up for them, any carts that you've created for them, any CMAs you've created for them. Anytime you guys have sent them an email, whether it was you or that auto email, you guys can come back here and see any of the emails that were sent. You can even see what particular listings were sent. So for instance, if they end up reaching out to you and they were like, hey, you sent me an email let's see, yesterday, and it had a listing in it, and I can't seem to find it again. Well, I can come into this particular contact, go over to their sent email, go over to the email that was sent yesterday, and I can see that, oh, it looks like that listing, maybe it went pending or something like that. It got released or it got closed or whatever. We can see all of that information in here. So each and every time you guys send something to someone, you guys can always come back, take a look at what listings were sent, when it was sent, etc. Makes it really easy to kind of keep track of things. Now, in addition to being able to see any of the stuff that you guys have sent for them or saved for them, like searches, it also shows them their one home searches. Now, what this means is that this particular individual, so George Foreman, has actually signed in to whatever I've sent him and ran his own search. So this is actually letting you guys see what the client is searching for. I don't think that I have any clients that I've created myself, or pretend clients, I guess, really, um, that they see that they've actually logged in and done the one home searches. So I'm gonna have to correct that at some point. But it is really handy because occasionally you guys will notice that there's a contact that, for whatever reason, they have a whole bunch of searches that you've set up for them. And then meanwhile, they've been running their own searches and they're radically different. I've had members that have contacted us in the past and they're like, this is wild. Like he's searching for properties that are not like anything that we've been searching for together. You know, you they can see that information, you can see that information. You might as well have a conversation about what it is they specifically want. Now, the final option on here is reverse prospecting. Anytime we set up a auto email for someone, it automatically subscribes them to a reverse prospecting. Now, what that means is that when I set up this auto email, any of the listings that happen to match his auto email, the agent that listed that property will see that I, as the agent, have a contact that might be interested in their property. They can send me an email and it'll automatically let me know that this particular contact was interested in that particular listing agent's listing. Now, whether or not they actually are interested, that's its own thing, but reverse prospecting allows you guys to be able to see who it is that might be interested in any properties that you guys have, or any of the times that you guys have sent off an email to a listing agent about a property that your client is interested in. So um, that whole thing, the reverse prospecting in and of itself, has its own video on our YouTube channel. And I did want to reiterate that since we're at the end of our class now, any of the questions that you guys might have, I'm happy to stick around for now. But if you guys do want to learn more, we have a YouTube channel, which is actually on our MLS portal down at the bottom right corner. You guys should see a little training videos link. We have a whole bunch of video tutorials. We're actually updating this frequently, and I've actually got a couple projects that I'm working on today to update a couple things here. But we've got how to edit your profile information, an introduction to Offer Manager, market stats, the entire ad edit webinar class. We have a pre-recorded version of this that you guys can go view. So anytime you guys are wanting to learn about any of our systems or the things that we've come out with, go check out our YouTube channel. We have a whole bunch of guides on how to use OneHome, how to use our MLS Touch app, any past webinars that we've presented, transaction desk services, the Matrix videos, which has a whole bunch of different things, going through all the
Here
different
are
ways that you guys can use all these different systems. So I really can't recommend it enough. If you guys have any questions or problems, I'm happy to stick around for them right now. But if you guys do need us again in the future, please reach out to us at the service desk. We're more than happy to help you guys. It's literally our jobs. So no question is too simple or too complex for us. Just give us a call and we're happy to be there for you. But if you guys wouldn't mind, hit that raise hand button one more time just so I know you're still here. And class is, again, officially over. So if you guys do want to cut and run, you guys can head out. Eddie, Heather, I appreciate it. Vicky, if you can hear me, hit that raise hand button just to let me know that you're still here. And you guys can head out. But I'll leave the session running for a couple more minutes here if you guys do have any other questions. But yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Enjoy this gross, steamy weather. Oh, yeah, no problem at all, Vicky. Thank you guys so much for joining us again. Again, class is officially over, so if you guys want to just dip, that's fine. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to stick around.